Yang berbahagia, Datuk Dr. IR Andy Siao, Co-Chair Pemuda, our distinguished panelists for today, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum and good morning to everyone. Welcome to MyMudah Zoom webinar series on towards closed house poultry farms. This series aims to provide input for unified public consultation UPC on MyMudah public consultation, reducing unnecessary regulatory burdens to support economic growth by private sector. For your information, in the Economic Action Council EAC meeting chaired by our YAB Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, EAC and MPC have been assigned to lead the program of Malaysia Mudah, or known as MyMudah. MyMudah is one of the initiatives introduced by the government in effort to remove unnecessary regulatory burdens. Relevant to the above, MPC currently conducts a public consultation for businesses and interested parties to work with the government to reduce burdens while protecting public interest through submitting their regulatory concern in UPC portal. They are welcome to send their regulatory concern at upc.mpc.gov.my. The consultation will be up until Friday, 20 August 2020. Without further ado, may I invite Yang Berbahagia, Datuk Dr. IR Andy Siao, Co-Chair Pemuda, to give his opening remarks. Please, Yang Berbahagia, Datuk.
Thank you. Good morning, Yang Berbahagia, Tan Sri, Datuk, our distinguished webinar panelists, participants and viewers. Welcome to the first MyMudah webinar series titled Towards Closed House Poultry Farms. Now, my name is Andy Siao, co-chair of Pemuda, the special task force to facilitate business. Now, Pemuda was formed since 2007 to bridge the gap between the private and public sectors by addressing business issues and providing pertinent recommendations to facilitate business. The collaboration between Pemuda's public and private sector members assists policymakers in making sound and workable solutions. The government, through EAC, Economic Action Council, had recently announced on the Malaysia Mudah or MyMudah program, a non-physical measure to further alleviate the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The aim of MyMudah is to remove unnecessary regulatory burden on business. This program is led by both EAC and the Malaysian Productivity Corporation, MPC, while Pemuda monitors the progress of the initiatives undertaken under this program. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the poultry industry is a good example of a successful agro-based or agro-food industry in the country. It had progressed well over the last few decades, largely on its own accord with investment in technology and know-how. Today, Malaysia is self-sufficient in poultry meat and eggs, with some to spare for exports to Singapore. Poultry meat and eggs are staple protein items in Malaysia and are of food security significance. Hence, all efforts should be taken to sustain the poultry industry. The industry needs to continue with its improvement, especially moving towards modern farming techniques such as moving from open house farming system to closed house farming system. This will help to reduce the fly and odor problems that has long been associated with poultry farms. Now, closed house farming system also enable the farmers to improve productivity and reduce labor content, especially foreign workers. Unfortunately, there are many obstacles for farmers to move along this innovative path. The most challenging obstacles is the planning approval, kebenaran merancang or KM, required for the construction of new closed houses or converting existing farms to these closed houses, and who can submit this KM application. The process of obtaining KM is costly in farming perspective and a long process. The farmers also have to overcome other regulatory issues such as land matters, especially conversion and license. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have with us today our highly experienced and knowledgeable panelists consisting of Mr. Terry Tan, President of the Federation of Livestock Farmers Association, FLFAM, Yang Bahagia Datuk Jeffrey Ng, Senior Advisor to FLFAM, Mr. Azhari Azad, the Executive Director of the Malaysian Flour Mill Berhad, Yang Bahagia Datuk Architect Azumi Hazami Ismail, President of the Malaysian Institute of Architect PAM, and Surveyor Chuang Guan Han, Land Surveyor and Principal of Juru Ugo Penang. The moderator for our session is Dr. Yap Tiao Chong, a veterinary surgeon, a veterinarian, and also the technical advisor to FLFAM. Today, the panelists will identify the regulatory problems faced by the industry, share their experiences, and give proposed solutions to assist relevant authorities, MPC, PEMUDA, to jointly overcome them. Through this webinar, public will have better understanding on the issue, provide their inputs, and propose solutions through online Malaysian MPC's Unified Public Consultation Portal, UPC, later on. MPC hopes to present this proposal in regulatory reform to the government to assist the poultry industry to modernize, improve business performance, and boost the country's economy, especially during these pandemic times under the new normal. With that, I wish everyone a fruitful and productive webinar. Stay safe and stay productive. Thank you.
All right, thank you Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. IR Andy Xiao.
Thank you.
Before we start, I would like to introduce to all of the attendees our moderator for today's session. He is none other than Yang Berusaha, Dr. Yap Teo Chong. Dr. Yap is a veterinarian graduated from University of Melbourne in 1972. He possessed a diploma in food hygiene and veterinary public health from the Royal Agriculture University in Copenhagen and a master from Murdoch University, West Australia. He worked in the Department of Veterinary Services for 14 years, 20 years in the Malaysian poultry industry, and 10 years with WHO and FAO as an international expert on AI and food safety risk mitigation in poultry supply chain in various countries. Currently, he is a technical consultant at Federation of Livestock Farmers Association of Malaysia. So I will pass the floor to Yang Berusaha, Dr. Yap, to moderate the session. The floor is now yours, Dr. Yap. Please.
Okay. Thank you, Cik Nurul, MC for today. And good morning, Yang Bahagia, Dato' Andy Xiao, co-chairman of PEMUDA, distinguished panelists. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished participants. We shall have a long session today, or at least half a day. And I'd like to begin with by explaining a little bit again on the slide here from the conversion of open house to poultry to closed house poultry farms. I think as our chairman, Dato' Andy Xiao, has mentioned, the open-sided houses are something that should be in the past now, and I think we should be moving towards closed-sided houses with tunnel ventilation. This is also the government's intention that we should modernize the poultry farms so that we have better biosecurity, better production performance, and then also to remove as much as possible the fly and odor problems that have long been associated with poultry farms. Now, while this is the target and the motive of the poultry industry as well as the government, unfortunately, we are faced with several issues, difficulties in land usage conversion from agriculture to livestock rearing. So we need what they call a tukar syarat, and we also have a long approval for the conversion, for the process of getting to the KM or kebenaran merancang, and then to obtain the CCC after that. This application for kebenaran KM is necessary because under the Agriculture Land Code, there should not be a permanent building, a permanent structure on the land. I think it's a point that perhaps later the panelists may discuss on this issue or so. And also, at the moment, the poultry farms also have an issue on the poultry license. This is the lesson unggas, which is renewable yearly. And it'll be best if this could be reviewed, and to see if a longer period of the lesson unggas could be entertained, so that when they speak to the bank for getting a bank loan to build the closed house, they get a better view on the matter. I think these are some of the issues that we will be discussing, especially it'll be addressed by the panelists in their personal individual presentation, but it'll also be discussed probably at the cross panel discussion later. Now, I think we'll move on to this because I think we are, so that there are a few issues here I think that we have to look into. I think the first one is, what about existing farms which are not closed house, maybe they're open house, and the existing farmhouses, we have to go into what's called a program of pemudahan. Now, this in many states and many districts is an issue, but we should look at also that perhaps Pulau Pinang has got an example that's perhaps a little bit more innovative, and where the program could be carried out immediately. But at the end of the day, I think even Penang, I think they may also have to apply for the KM. Now, on the land matters, there are three issues that we should look at. I said that's now about the land conversion. And the land conversion, the tukar syarat nyata, is also taking a fair bit of time for the presentation to get that completed. And some of it can take up to about 3 years. Now, there's an interesting initiative carried out by Johor, which now provides for a permit khas ternakan ayam. So this permit khas ternakan ayam is a fast-track solution while the farm owner carry out the ubah jenis syarat nyata tanah, which has to be completed within 3 years. So this is in Johor. That's something that perhaps can be looked at and see whether it can be adopted in other states as well. Now, coming to the development order, many complaints and many farmers have raised the issue that this process at the moment is taking a long process. It can take up to 2 to 3 years, and it's also a very costly affair. So I think the Department of Veterinary Services, which also has been working together with the Federation of Livestock Farmers Association Malaysia, or FLFAM, to come up with some standard operating procedure. And it is hoped that this SOP would then be able to get the approval within 2 months. But it still requires the submission of building plans, and which should be also be carried out by what they call qualified professional architect or professional engineers. And I think this development order, or the kebenaran merancang, is a major obstacle, as it varies from state to state, and also the syarat inside there, or what they call the compliance requirements are different from different states, and it can be even sometimes different from different districts. So I think this is an area that really require to be looked at, and we hope later the panelists will talk a little bit more about this. And last but not least, the lesson unggas. The lesson unggas, perhaps we should look at the lesson unggas, not that it has to be renewed every year, but to give it on a 5-year basis. But of course, with proviso that the farmer comply to whatever syarat that the lesson unggas has stated. And any non-compliance to the syarat, then the lesson unggas can be withdrawn or suspended. This, therefore, would then make it a little bit easier to brief for the farmers. I think this is something then I think that the discussion we will have during the panelists, or perhaps it might be addressed also by the panelists in their individual presentations. Now I'd like to start, the next step is to bring out the presentation by the 5 panelists, and they are going to share with us some of their experience in this matter. The first panelist that I'd like to introduce is Mr. Terry Tan Chi Hee, and Mr. Tan has got more than 15 years of experience in the poultry farming industry. He has been in the breeding farm management, and as well as in the broiler farm, breeding and broiler, and he's also a leading authority actually on kampung chicken, being also a breeder farm director of Syarikat Sin Long Heng, which is a breeding farm and a pioneer in the breeding of kampung chicken since the 1970s. This is an interesting achievement, and of course, it is ayam kampung is of course a very delicious chicken that many people, those who can afford it, will look for. Now, we hope that Mr. Terry, who is also the president for the Penang and Province Valley Farmers Association since 2017, and also the president of the Federation of Livestock Farmers Association of Malaysia since 2019. He will share with us for the next 10 minutes what are his views on all these matters. Over to you, Mr. Terry.
Thank you, Dr. Yap, and a very good morning to everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizer MPC for inviting me as a panelist in this webinar. Today, I would like to highlight some current farming issues in Malaysia. There are more than 12% of 2,900 plus farms in Malaysia reported KM-related issues. And I believe that there are more than 70% of existing farms in Malaysia are facing the KM-related issue as well. Second, there are different rules and regulations of KM in every state currently. For example, the buffer zone in Penang, it is 200 meters for closed house system, whereas in Negeri Sembilan, it's a 500 meters. So the other state, they have a different buffer zone, and they have different rules and regulations to approve for the KM. The third one, licensing issue, such as yearly basis renewal and being issued by different government department. In Penang, the license being issued by MBSP. In Perak, the license is issued by DVS. So this is a current situation happening in Malaysia. Number 4 is very high investment cost for closed house system and modern farming. And it's easily to cost 50 ringgit per bird compared to for closed house system, compared to less than 15 ringgit for open house system. Number 5, difficulty to get a bank loan and financial support from government, such as tax incentive or any grant. The reason that our industry, our poultry industry, is categorized by is a high-risk sector by the financial institutes. Number 6, complaints of environmental issue in Malaysia. Like the incident happened in Johor year 2017. It was ammonia pollution in Johor River. The last one, Anti-Profiteering Act. I would like to highlight this in this webinar because it's a barrier and discouraging the investment in our industry. Next slide, please. I will propose some solutions for farming in Malaysia. Then we should look at the standardized of SOP, and it is needed for whole Malaysia to simplify the KM for farming. There are 2 good examples. One is Pemutihan in Penang for existing farm. It is exempted from the contribution of drainage, waiver from penalty, and setback, buffer zone, and so on. There's another one is a permit cast in JB, Johor Bahru, in Johor State for existing farm to convert the land use within 3 years' time once you submitted. Second one is a closed house system, and modern farming are required in Malaysia to overcome the environmental issue. These were, like Dr. Yap just mentioned, that it will reduce environmental pollution such as odor problem, flies, and so on. And the third one, license farming, it has to be issued by the DVS and at least valid for 5 years or more. The reason that DVS is more understanding for our farming and they know what we are doing, there's a reason that they can do a better arrangement for auditing our farm to make sure that we are fulfill the modern farming, or at least that we are taking care of environmental factors. Number 4, low interest rate or zero interest rate from the bank loans to upgrade the existing farm or to build a new farm. And I hope that government should look into this sector seriously, because every conversion of an open system to a closed system, and it is very costly. And we hope that could get a financial support by the government, or at least for the financial institute with a lower rate. And we can upgrade the open system to closed house system or to the modern farming. And very last one that I would like to highlight again, hope that our industry, our poultry industry, can be exempted from the Anti-Profiteering Act. And because we are in the commodity war, we heavily depending on the demand and supply. Next slide, please. I would like to share some information or my experience in Penang. It's a simplified KM and Pemutihan Unggas in Penang. That's very good for the farmers in Penang State, because that we are a very smooth transition to get the approval for KM to legalize our existing farm. The first one that simplified KM to submit via OSC as usual, it's only involve 5 departments. No longer 16 or 17 departments in other states. There will be the building department, engineering, health services, BOMBA, and DVS. And we only submit the building plan instead of KM for the first stage. What are the exemptions from the Pemutihan in Penang? There are few, 6, I think 7. First one is a land use, Sarat Tanah, conversions, we don't need to do that. Parking lot contributions, OKU, landscape are exempted. And the penalty for illegal building in the farm, 10 times of the penalty will be waived as well. The one very costly is a contribution of drainage. In Penang, it's about 50,000 per acre, and it will be waived as well. And the Penang government are very kind, and they give this pemutihan to those farms which they are having a license farming which expired or they have any court case attached with that, and they still allow to do the pemutihan. The next one is assisting farm without the license farming as well. If they don't report it to the EVS, which means that they hide inside the palm oil estate, but at least they can prove that the evidence is a running farm before the enactment. It means that April 2018. So they are still eligible to going through the pemutihan in Penang. In Penang State, the pemutihan is implemented since 2018 and actually is ended by this month 2020. It will be extended by another year or 2 years. The government, Penang government, has said that they will do so, and it's a little bit of time to get the proper approval to do the announcement. So I hope that it will be 2 years at least for the farms in Penang that to have enough time to do the upgrading and to legalize their farms. Currently, there are only 20 farms submitted for their pemutihan out of 354. So it's still 90-something% to go. One thing I want to highlight in Penang, the pemutihan is slightly different than what we understand. And in Penang State, Penang government understand that our existing open house system is not suitable to directly convert to a closed house system. That's why they allow to demolish the old system and you can build a new closed house system, which means that with the correct dimensions, correct length of the house in order to get the optimized performance of the system. So this is a good news for the farmers in Malaysia, in Penang as well. I hope that this will be implemented for other states as well. Hope that it will simplify all this KM and ease our farmers to get the approval for our existing farm. Thank you. That's all for my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Terry Tan, for some very good sharing of experience, especially from Penang. And I think something that perhaps we could look forward for a more detailed discussion during the panel. Now, the next panelist that I'd like to introduce and is Dato Jeffrey Ngchunni. And Dato is a chemical engineer by profession from Kansas University. And he has worked in the petrochemical industry, both in US as well as in Malaysia until the year 1999. And then when he come back, and now he's working since 1999, has been working as a general manager for a very large poultry company called named Chok Cheong Bee, Senadiran Berhad. Now, Chok Cheong Bee business focus on broiler chicken farming as well as marketing. And currently, Dato is also the advisor to the FLFAM, or Federation of Livestock Farmers Association Malaysia. He was the president of FLFAM from 2015 to 2019. With this very short description of Dato Jeffrey Ng, I'd like to invite Dato Jeffrey to give his presentation of his views about the poultry industry currently. Dato, over to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start my presentation, I thought that it's good for me to share, to let everyone see what modern enclosed environments, closed houses or closed farming look like. I share these three pictures. This was a project that I built 2 years ago in Negeri Sembilan, in about 6 acres of land. costing me around 10 million ringgit to build this farm. It was old open house structures that I converted to closed house. As you can see, look at the house, the chicken house. It's no longer old, dirty. The house looked like condo or bungalow now. So, you know, the issue about odor or issue about fly, I think is more or less being able to manage it better under these constructions. So that is just a preview of what could open house actually change to close up. We were actually doing the open house change to close out because of the encouragement or the requirement by Jabatan Perkhidmatan Veterinary for the past almost 20 years, asking all the assisting open house operator convert their half farm to close out. We kind of unlucky or lucky that we were actually forced to take over the farm because the owner of the farm was basically go bankrupt or go out of business because they have some problem. So we took over that farm in 2016, and we managed to convert the farm within 2 years to closed house. Issue about converting open house to closed house, basically technical know-how is very important because you know whatever that we see in the Western world or in US, the climate is different. You know, their humidity is low, whereas in Malaysia the temperature is high and the humidity is high also. So some of the design, some of the things that was actually brought in from overseas may not actually applicable in Malaysia climate. So we have to do a lot of innovations, a lot of changes on the farming. Funding is a major issue also because you know if you want to get funding from the banker, the financial institution, they were asking about whether can you be operating for the next 10 years or 20 years. If you are only operating for 1 year, 2 years, then how can they fund you? Because whatever investment that you put into this project, it needs to be returned by 10 years or to pay back to the government in 10 years time or in whatever term that you sign with them. The other problem that we see on the conversion of open house to closed house is basically power supply. Because most of all this open house farming is located in rural areas. Some of the farm actually have to pull in cable for 6 kilometers. It's another project that I do in Johor. We need to spend a lot of money to pull the power cable from TMD to the farm. With all that, you know, after we convert the open house to close out, we get the license UNGAS, which is the poultry farming license. But you know, the local government will come back to us and say, "Well, your farm is not legal because you are not registered under local government." So they came to us and asked us to do pemutihan. So pemutihan is for us to submit all our drawing, our assisting whatever that we have done to it to actually get it legalized. We spend consultant fee more than 100,000 for 2-3 locations. Submission fee because they want us to submit serentak in Negeri Sembilan Jelebu. That means to say for KM for kemenangan merancang of using the land, tukar syarah nyata, submission for building plan, and the whole thing. So we submitted, and the cost of submission to the local government is almost 80,000+ for 3 locations. However, after preparing for almost 8 months, all the documents we submitted to the local government during the first OSC meeting, the whole thing was being rejected without any appeal. So all the money that we spent, almost 200,000, go to the drain. Let me just say, whatever that we have now are still illegal in that business sense. So how can the bank continue to fund us? That's the dilemma that we are in. So how to resolve this? We're asking the government to look into, when you do pemutihan, a lot of things have been there before you do the pemutihan. So if you want to ask us to follow the building by law, ask us to survey the drainage up to the discharge near to the nearest river, which is a few kilometers away. Some of the location is not able to do it because, like one of my location of farm, which is even lower than the river. So, we can't basically discharge it to the river. So that's a problem that we have. So I think when we do pemutihan, we have to look at different angles. I think what is the purpose of local government want us to do pemutihan? And, we are actually providing, wholesome food, and we try to be doing affordable and at the same time safe to consume. So we really ask the government to look into that as a way to help us so that we will continue doing our job to serve the people. After we talk about converting open house to close out, we also trying to do, because a locality issue, some of the open house can be converted to close out. Next slide, please. We try to submit link location. Next slide, please. To submit new location to build new farm, where the location is accessible by power and water and whatever. But the whole process is actually very tedious, because I think if you were to do it, you have to do first KM to submit for your kementerian merancang in changing the syarat nyata from pertanian tiada to pertanian ternakan. And they will normally ask, as I said, they will normally ask you to draw up what is your proposed project would be, how much houses you do and whatnot. We did it in Malacca on this project. Unfortunately, we were asked to have a car park for based on the building size. We also asked to have a flood retaining pond in the project. That means to say you have to have a big pond to retain the rainwater if it's raining, so that you will avoid flooding to the next land. We were asked, latest that we were asked to do environmental impact analysis or survey to assure that it will have minimum impact on the surrounding environment. We were also asked to, we were actually being rejected because they said the buffer zone now in Malacca, they want it to be 2 kilometers instead of what you heard just now, 200 meters, 300 meters, or 500 meters. They now ask for 2 kilometers. So basically, I tell all my board that, if that's the case, then we stop building farm, because there's no way for us to find a land which is 2 kilometers away from housing area or five numbers of houses nearby you. So how can you find a farm or a land that can meet that requirement? That to say that, maybe the government is asking us to close down. So we should import all the chicken from now on, because they don't want farming to be happening in the state. So but if you understand the Land Act, the question that we all have is based on Land Act. If it's agricultural land, you should not have a permanent structures, and you should not basically follow a building act to have all that. Because agricultural land is only allowed for temporary building. So I will not elaborate on that, but then I'm wishing that if it's possible, something quite more workable or something more sensible for agriculture industry development. Whatever that we are in now, agriculture industry is being forced to adopt the Industry Building Act or law to to build our own our farm. So that actually is a big obstacle for the agriculture industry to move forwards. Thus, I leave this to the floor and see anyone can give us a better proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jeffrey. I think Dato has raised some very good challenges to the industry. If the old farms drop off, and under the present situation, maybe difficult to bring in new farmers with all these existing regulatory requirements. I think Dato has got the opinion that maybe one of these days, instead of being self-sufficient in poultry, we may have to import chicken, although it's a staple meat as far as and a national food security issue. So I think this is something that we should take up again during the panel discussion. If we compare to other meat, take beef and mutton, for instance, they are all largely imported. More than 85% of our beef is imported, and our mutton, and those prices have gone up tremendously over the last 20 years, the price of beef as the price of mutton. Is this going to happen to chicken also? This is a question that Dato is asking. So now we'll leave that hanging there for everybody to think about, and I think we could come back for more discussion during the panel. But right now, I'd like to introduce the third panelist, Encik Azari Ashad. And I think Encik Azari Ashad is a very acknowledged and accomplished director of companies. He's a board and as well as a non-executive director from since 2012. He has more than 20 years of experience in business development. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in economics from University of Buckingham, and he has worked in different companies, especially in the petroleum industries, in Shell, in Benzol, Malaysia, marketing Conoco, Phillips, and also in Petronas. And currently, he's also the executive director in Malayan Flour Mills, and he's also looking at the corporate development, corporate affairs, and the business development in the poultry group of companies, as well as in the flour business. And I think with those few words, I'd like to hand the mic over to Encik Azari.
Assalamualaikum and good morning. First of all, I want to thank MPC for organizing this web seminar, which I think is very timely, especially during this COVID-19 crisis, where things are not as they were before. It's as though the country has to reboot itself. So I think maybe this is a good opportunity for us, also Malaysia, to reboot at some of the way we do things in business and in government. I'd like to start with a quote by the former Prime Minister. There are 60 processes for the construction sector alone. In some places, it takes 3 years before you can kickstart a project. And that's the crux of the problem, I think. I still recall when we were trying to celebrate Malaysia's 50th year of Merdeka, and 2007 was our Visit Malaysia year. Yeah. So I remember a hotelier saying that there's no point talking about Visit Malaysia year 2007 when it has taken me 4 years to get approval to build a hotel. So unfortunately, that cost the country in terms of income, employment, and foreign revenue. Okay, so one of the things here I have to say is that, firstly, may I say that we from the integrated poultry industry are in the same boat as the government. That's how we see it. Yep, we see that we have a shared problem here. It's not just our problem, but we think it's a problem for the country as well. However, we accept that government bureaucracy, approvals, submissions is part of doing business in Malaysia. It's part of the business landscape. We accept that. And government bureaucracy, like it or not, is a legacy. And there is a certain perception that if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Now, what we don't see that this is an invisible cost to the country and to the economy, a cost that you do not see. And I think this is where we have to grab hold of this invisible cost and try to reduce it and to some extent measure its impact, because it may have an impact on GDP as a whole. And on a macro level, bureaucracy plays both the dual role of promoting as well as hampering economic growth. And what we want is an effective. We don't want to get away with approvals. We don't want to get away with submissions, KMs and CFs and CCCs. But what we want is an effective bureaucracy. That's what we want. We want an effective system that promotes efficiency and economic growth. Now, if you look at my next slide, that came from the World Bank. According to the World Bank's Doing Business 2019 report on ease of regulations and ease of doing business, Malaysia is ranked 15th in the world, up from 24 out of 190 countries. This is the criteria is in terms of obtaining. I think they're trying to uniform it in terms of obtaining construction permits, securing electricity, registering property, trading across borders, resolving insolvency. Yeah. But what's not stated here is at the local level what we have to go through. Okay. Now, if you look at the top 5 countries in terms of doing business, there's New Zealand, Singapore, Denmark, Hong Kong, South Korea, with the respective scores of 86.59, 85.24, Denmark 84.4, and there's Malaysia with a score of 80.6. Now, so that's where the benchmarking is. Now, if you look in terms of starting a business, however, we are ranked 122 out of 190 countries. Now, this is an eye-opener for everybody. Now, compared to the fact that while they say that we are ranked 15th in terms of doing business, we are 122 in terms of starting a business. And this is it. If you want to start a business, you have to encourage investors. Now, if you were an investor, if you were to see Malaysia at 122, what would you think? Would you want to invest in a country that is ranked 122 for starting a business? Okay. Now, you have to also bear in mind is that Malaysia is the 17th largest trading nation in the world. We are export-oriented. Okay. So, again, this does not balance with the ranking of 122 out of 190 countries. And this is a problem for anybody who wants to start new business here. Especially now today, we are trying to create new businesses, bring in new investors, and this is highly critical. And if you look again at some of the examples, I mean, what we like to do is to compare us with Singapore, yeah, our neighbor Singapore. We have to do 9.5 procedures and 13.5 days just to register a business, compared to 2 procedures and 1.5 days in Singapore. So the math is there. And again, this is the crux of the problem. And I said, dare I say that when you compare this, dare I say that our red tape is possibly one of the single largest factors that would discourage potential investors. So these are the things that we have to look on a macro level. I'll try not to repeat what my previous 2 speakers have highlighted much earlier. I'd like to just give an overview of some of the issues that we have to face in the poultry integration industry, right? Now, this is in dealing with state and local bureaucracies. There is a certain culture of control by state and local authorities, up to 15 agencies just for submission and approvals. Now, this doesn't take into consideration the minimum period that they mentioned that takes. It should take 3 months if there are no problems, no issues, which rarely happens actually. So again, there's this culture of control that the state and the local authorities like to have, I think, you know. Then there is also a mentality, a mindset that it is guilty until proven innocent versus innocent until proven guilty syndrome, right? Now, I'm not sure why this is. That means essentially it's no until they say yes, rather than it's yes until they say no. Is there a distrust of private sector? Yeah, people like us. The other point that we've discovered as in the government process, that there is little incentive, if not none, to improve services for the private sector. Now, let's say, for example, if it takes 3 months, why shouldn't they aim for 1 month? I don't know. I'm just thinking aloud. You know, is there a government machinery? Is there a methodology that would say that, you know, they want to improve? And also is that there seems to be a lack of coordination within the agencies. No doubt we go through the one-stop center, but when we submit, right, the onus is on the project owner or land owner to do the following up. There is nobody in the OSC that's coordinating all these activities on a, on an effective basis and on an efficient basis on behalf of the project owner. So that means I have to appoint somebody, a consultant, to follow up all the various agencies and find out where we are at the planning procedure, where we are along the pipeline of approvals, you know, and if something goes wrong, is it highlighted? You see? So again, like I said, the onus is on the project owner. So there seems to be no coordination at the local authority level. And the other thing is, there seems to be a lack of understanding and also a lack of urgency on investors' needs or private sector's needs. You know, for us, I'm sure all of you know, time is money. So that somehow that is not translated to the approving authorities, that time is money. You know, for them, if I say 3 months, it's 3 months. You know, but for us, can you imagine if we were able to do this? Imagine the benefits. I'll give you the best example that I can think of where something went well was when we built the North-South Highway. When we built the North-South Highway, it was opened in 1994, started building in 1988. In fact, the North-South Highway actually came on 6 months early. So by coming on 6 months early, you know, you're able to collect much more toll at earlier process. And not just that, you're able to what do you call it, to improve the traffic situation, going from Kuala Lumpur to the north and from Kuala Lumpur to the south. You know, so there was a benefit by opening the North-South Highway early. Yeah, this is just one example where I think the authorities broke their backs to ensure that the North-South Highway was built way ahead of time. So what are the possible solutions here? You know, one of it is to look at possibly deregulating some of the submissions. I mean, do we need to do all of it? You know, do we need to go through all those layers? Is it really necessary? Could we not just, rather than seek approval just for info only? Yeah, just for info only, so that, you know, it will help and expedite the approval process. But I suppose to do this, we need to build some kind of trust between us and the government. I think if the government gives us that trust, I think we can do a lot to make things a lot better. And again, we need to shift the mentality from the no until yes to a yes until no kind of mindset. Yeah, so that in the end it becomes more of a compliance rather than an approval type process, submission approval type process. You see, I mean, I think we've evolved. I think at one time, I look at DBKL, we've gone from a CF to CCC. So that's quite possible. And the best part of all this is there is no cost to the local authority, to the government, to have this mindset. You know, there's no cost. Okay, and one of the things is, of course, as far as to improve the services and the coordination, of course, the government did the OSC, that they help me as a one-stop center. But I still think that we need to work with the local government to help them to see where they can have continuous improvement, and where they can help do better coordination that will help expedite all the submission and approval process. Again, I want to state that, we are not against bureaucracy, we're not against approvals, but what we want is an effective approving authority. And I think that should be our goal. And when it comes to the issue of lack of understanding and urgency of investors' needs, so I think we have to make them understand that we are all in the same boat. We need to create this shared vision. I mean, previously there was that Malaysia incorporated concept, right, where the private sector and public sector work closely together for the betterment of Malaysia. So we need to build this partnership between us and the local authorities somehow, right? So that this partnership is not just for yes or no, not just for approvals, but that is something that is synergistic and that will actually impact the growth of the country. Because sometimes what we don't see is, how does bureaucracy actually impact the GDP? But I believe that with an effective approving authority and approval system, we can actually create additional growth to the country, improve GDP to the country without any cost to the country. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Encik Azari, for some very good philosophical approach to the problem. And I think it's always very easy to say no, more difficult to say yes. I think this is a universal problem. I think you mentioned a bit about one-stop center, and I think there are instances where sometimes 15 agencies, and if one agency takes time to respond, then the matter is hanging. And this is where, despite having one-stop agency or one-stop center, we're still facing problems of a long delay in trying to work out on this, especially on the KM issue. So I think this is something that perhaps we need to take a look at. And I think this, just now Dato' Jeffrey Ng talked about the problem of attracting new investors into the poultry industry because of all the various problems. And I think, again, you touch on the lack of understanding and urgency of investors' needs. And I think that, again, is a negative motivator or this encouragement to investment in the poultry industry. And I hope all these matters will receive a very close attention, a very urgent attention, because we cannot allow the poultry industry to go back with no new farmers coming in as the older farmers back out of the industry, whether by health or by age reasons. We need new crops of farmers coming in, and therefore we need new investors. And I think we need to have a good climate for investment in the poultry industry. And I hope that this is a matter that the government will look at it so that chicken products or poultry products, whether it's the poultry meat or the eggs, remain as a staple food, a staple meat provision in our national food security. I think this is an overriding issue that is extremely important. I think let not our cost of living go up because we have to pay higher cost of poultry products in the near future. So I think with that, I think thank you, Encik Azari. We should not allow something to drag on. Now, the next panelist that I'd like to introduce is a young Bahagia, Dato' Architect Azumi. Azumi Hazani is a member of the focus group in dealing with construction permit formed under MyMudah since 2012. He's a board member of the Architects Malaysia. In fact, is now recently elected as the president of the Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, or PEM, and for the third time now. And I think this is wonderful, and real Shabas Dato' Azumi. In agriculture practice, in architecture practice, Dato' is a director of Architect MAA Sindiran Berhad. It's one of the larger architecture practices. We know various awards, including PEM Architecture Awards, CNBC Asia Pacific Property Award, MIP Excellence in Planning Awards, and BCI Asia Top 10 Architect Awards. And this is an illustrious career, and he has led the implementation of many projects, hospitals, apartment, office, hotels, and many more. Dato' Azumi has graduated as a bachelor degree in housing building and planning and Bachelor of Architecture from the USM, and also a Master of Philosophy, Policy Studies from University of Technology, Malaysia. So illustrious academic background as well as a career background. With that, we'd like to hear from Dato' Azumi some of his views about the problems faced by the poultry industry. Let us hear how he shares his opinion. Over to you, Dato'.
Okay, good morning and Assalamualaikum. Thank you, Dr. Yap. Okay, yes, okay, this is my first slide. So, having listened to the discussion by all other panelists and also the introduction by Dr. Yap, I think the topic that I want to discuss today is looking into how to facilitate the business. From the industry players, many of the players say that now they're required to renew their license unggas, and also they need to legalize the building. I put the legalize in the inverted comma, like a reason that when you say they need to legalize, does that mean that now they are illegal? So I asked this question when discussing this topic. The reason why I say that, because there are three major acts that I want to look today, which is the National Land Code, the Town and Country Planning Act, and also the Street Drainage and Building Act, which actually gazetted the Uniform Building Bylaw under this Street Drainage and Building Act. The first thing is that National Land Code. Okay, under National Land Code, there are three land, the zoning, land zoning or land use category. So for each category of land use, there are implied condition or syarat tetap for every alienation of land. For example, under section 116, for the land alienated under category for building, there's no part of the land shall be used for agriculture or industrial purposes. So it's clearly stated that when the land is alienated for the building, for development for building, whether it's residential, commercial, institution, then there shouldn't be any industrial or agriculture activity. Then under section 117, for the land alienated for industry, and it's only for industrial purpose, including factories, workshop, foundries, warehouses, docks, jetty, railway, and so on, or other building related to manufacturing, production, or distribution of power, assembling, processing, storage, and so on. Basically related to industrial. And section 118 is mentioned about the land category, land alienated under category of agriculture. It says that no building other than temporary one shall be erected thereon without the approval of the land administrator. So these three sections under the National Land Code quite clear says that for agricultural land, you cannot build a building except for the temporary one. But if you still need to build a permanent one, then you must get the approval from the land administrator. So this is the implied condition. Of course, now today there are practices that many express condition or syarat yang to be imposed on every land title. So we don't want to discuss that at the moment. Maybe later Surveyor Chuang can talk about it. So at the first layer of land alienation, there is for a specific purpose. National Land Code actually established before the Town and Country Planning Act. National Land Code 1965, Town and Country Planning Act 1976. So the district officer or land office used to be the authority that plan for land use. Okay, so for alienation and zoning for the land use before the Town and Country Planning Act existed. Then if you look at the Town and Country Planning Act, under the use of land and buildings, Section 18, Section 81 also said that no person shall use or permit to be used any land or building otherwise than in conformity with the local plan. So it means that you cannot build anything unless the building that you want to build must be in conformity with the local plan. But not every local authority or not every state has the local plan. Some of the states, they do not have the local plan. But Section 18.3 is very interesting. It says that Subsection 1 shall not affect the continuance of the use of any land or building for the purposes for which and to the extent to which it was lawful being used prior to the date when the local plan first come to effect. So it means that for those existing farmers who already involved in farming even before the gazette of the local plan, they have the existing right to continue the poultry farming, and that does not constitute that activity as illegal, because the provision of this act under Section 18.3 actually they are allowed. Okay, the farmer are allowed to continue as long as they are not doing anything which is illegal. So by planning, they have the existing right. And then we look at the Street Drainage and Building Act, where actually under the Street Drainage and Building Act, Section 70, it says that every plan, every building or structure to be erected, you must submit and get the written consent from the local authority. So it is regulated and governed through the Uniform Building Bylaw. But a Uniform Building Bylaw also allow for erection of temporary structure. Okay, I highlighted temporary structure here because if you look at under the National Land Code, Section 118, it says that no building other than a temporary one shall be erected on the agricultural land. So it means that you don't need approval for temporary structure on the agricultural land. Under Uniform Building Bylaw, Uniform Building Bylaw 2 interpretation also say that temporary building may include any house or building, the erection of which is permitted under license issued by the local authority for a limited period. Okay, but when you go to Uniform Building Bylaw 19, temporary permit is given to a temporary structure which is related to for temporary use for construction of a building. But under Uniform Building Bylaw 2 interpretation, temporary building can cover even a house which is temporary built. So I would like to expand this interpretation for Section 2, means that the local authority has the authority to issue or to allow temporary building to be erected. Okay, so what are the difference between the temporary building and the permanent building or permanent structure? Under Uniform Building Bylaw, if your building is intended for temporary use for a limited period, then you do not require to submit for a building plan approval. Okay, so you don't need to have the CCC. But if the building plan is going to be permanent, let's say office or factory or houses, then you have to submit for building plan approval. Then you must obtain the CCC before you can occupy the building. So overlapping these three regulations in the chart, the three circles. So the National Land Code, Town and Country Planning Act, and Street Drainage and Building Act, Uniform Building Bylaw, I cannot put all for this building that we are talking about, for the poultry farm building, I cannot put a single building which can comply with all the 3 acts. So the National Land Code say that, okay, it's agriculture land, then you can build a temporary structure, and if you want, if you want to build a permanent structure, you must get the approval from the land administrator, I mean the land office. But okay, the Town and Country Planning Act also allow for temporary building, but it is for existing building. Okay, if you want to have a temporary building for a new building, then you still need to submit for the KM. And the Street Drainage and Building Act also has a provision. Okay, has a provision for temporary building. So, but you cannot have building which can comply with the requirement by all the acts. For example, okay, from the discussion just now says that some state require the land to be converted, okay, from agriculture to the industry. Then only you can build this industrial farming. Okay, but in the National Land Code says that if your land is industry, you are not allowed to do farming. Okay, and farming is only under agriculture land, and agriculture land you cannot build the industrial building. So these are the issues. So it's very difficult for it looks like there is no possibility for you to comply with this building to comply with all the regulation. Can we move to the next slide? Okay, and I think Datuk Jeffrey and also Mr. Terry Tan mentioned about KM requirement imposed by local authorities. If you look at Town and Country Planning Act, okay, under Section 19, the provision of development without planning permission. Planning permission is a KM, kemenangan merancang, in English, planning permission. No person other than local authority shall commence, undertake or carry out any development unless planning permission in respect of the development has been granted. So it says that you cannot develop. You cannot develop unless you have the planning permission. Then we have to see the definition of development. When you want to do a farmhouse or enclosed, close-sided farmhouse to the existing farmhouse, does that consider as development? So if it is not considered development, why do you need the KM? Because the law says that if you want to develop the land, then only you need the KM. Okay, Section 2, interpretation, development. Okay, at the bottom of the slide, if you look at Section 2, development means the carrying out of any building, engineering, mining, industrial, or other similar operation. Okay. Are we considering agriculture or farmhouse for agriculture purpose, for poultry purpose, as a development? It does not align with this definition. This definition say, of course, it say that any building, engineering, mining, industrial. So basically, engineering, mining, and industrial is already out. And you may say that the temporary structure or the shed for poultry as a building. But again, if somebody try to define, okay, the poultry farmhouse as building, it contradicts the National Land Code. This is why I say that you cannot comply. Okay, this building cannot comply with all this regulation. If you comply with the two, you contradict the other one. You comply with the other two, you contradict this one. So if we understand what is the meaning of development, then it becomes more clearer. Then we can start question ourselves, do we need KM? Or we are not going to build 20-story buildings or 10-story apartment. It's not development, it's still agriculture. It's just that the chicken need shelter. It's just a shelter to protect the chicken from weather, and then in a controlled environment. Okay, maybe we can proceed to the next slide. So looking at what the industry wants and what are the opportunity that we have. So these are the regulatory options in for modernizing poultry farm buildings. So we look at the existing condition, which is the structure is a temporary structure and it is a conventional structure. The first row of the table, if you look at, is conventional and temporary. So the building structure is made from timber and metal. So that's why it's deemed as a temporary. So timber and metal structure can be considered temporary depending on the usage, the period of usage. So if we maintain that under the land use of agriculture land and maintain the construction of timber and metal, mean that the building can be dismantled, can be removed, okay, whenever it is required. Then, according to the National Land Code, there is no planning approval requirement because it is constructed or erected on the agriculture land. And then you don't need building occupation permit because it's agriculture. There's no human going to occupy the buildings other than the workers who need to feed the chicken or to take care or to take the produce. Then permit validity, of course, when under this category of conventional and temporary structure, then there will be temporary. But there will be a limit. Okay, there will be a time limit. I think that's a typo error. It's not no time limit. There will be a limit. Okay, for the permit validity. Usually, many local authority practice is only 1 year permit. Okay. Oh, sorry. I have to correct this. This is under conventional. Under conventional, there is no time limit. Okay. Because you don't need the permit from local authority. This is under the land office. Under the land office allow you to do farming under agriculture. So there is no permit. Basically, there is no permit, so there is no time limit. Okay, you can use it perpetually because it's gazetted it's alienated as the agriculture land. So this process is fast and very cheap, no cost. Basically, you don't have to submit for KM. You don't need to engage the architect, engineers. But the government also promote modernization of the farmhouse. So under modernization, there are two approach, okay, temporary or permanent. But under the temporary structure for modernization, you still need to use a similar construction method. Okay, timber or metal, which is that it can be dismantled and can be reassembled whenever it's required. But now there's a requirement by some local authority that to change the land category from agriculture to industry. That I think in some state, maybe in Selangor, I was informed that in Selangor, there's a requirement to convert the land from agriculture to industry. So if the land is not converted under the option of agriculture, in some states still allow agriculture, then under this practice, you can apply for temporary permit. The only issue for the temporary permit, they only give on the yearly basis. So the farmer has issue that when they want to have the bank loan, then the bank maybe not really, it is not bankable because of the short duration of the validity of the permit. However, it is possible under this, okay, unless if the local authority can look into giving a longer duration for the permit. Of course, under agriculture land, okay, it's fast and there is some cost, but not too much because you still need to get the permit. But if you convert the land to industry, then you still have a temporary permit, 1 year or up to 2 years. But the process converting the land from agriculture to industry is going to take long time. The process is very slow and it can be very expensive because you need to submit for KM and then after that only you can do the conversion of the land. And conversion of the land for the area which is gazetted with local plan is not easy. The process can take years before you can get the approval. And the last option is for permanent building. Permanent building, modernization under permanent building, of course, okay, you have to do according to the due process. So there is no limitation in terms of building material. You can use brick, concrete, timber, or metal. And the land has to be converted to industry, and planning approval required, of course. For land conversion, you must have the planning approval. And this process, you must go through the building plan submission, open construction completion, then the PSP has to issue CCC. And this building can be permanent. So there's no time limit for it. The process is very slow and of course very expensive because you need full consultant team, and then you have to go through all the process. So these are the 4 regulatory options that we have. So if we look at the number I put at the end of every row, number one actually is in between the National Land Code and Town and Country Planning Act, mean that it can comply. It can comply with National Land Code, comply with Town and Country Planning Act. Number 2, okay, the number 2 is between the circle of National Land Code and Street Drainage and Building Act. So it means that it can comply with these 2. And number 3, it can comply Town and Country Planning Act and Street Drainage and Building Act. But none of these options actually can comply with all the 3. So that's why I put question mark. So what the industry wants actually is the one in the question mark, which is fast, cheap modernization and long permit validity. So the industry need fast, okay, approval, fast process, and not too costly, okay, and it has to be modernized, and the permit has to be for long validity period. So what are the approach that we can consider? Okay, so the new approach that may be under this relaxation of regulation and also to stimulate the recovery after the post pandemic, also post MCO, maybe the government should look into facilitating the industry. For example, here, my proposal here that the building structure, okay, because the building structure actually is modular system, prefabrication using metal and timber. So it can be considered as temporary structure, not necessarily considered as permanent structure. Land use, we can maintain it as agriculture, no need for the conversion of land from agriculture to industry. So therefore, there's no requirement for KM submission. Planning approval not required for temporary structure if comply with the existing requirement of local plan. As long as a local plan say that the land is for agriculture, so you can build the structure there. When I say temporary structure, it does not mean that the structure that will collapse in 1 year or 2 years. Temporary structure, temporary building mean that there is a limited time for its establishment. So that limited time under the UBBL, it does not limit 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years for the temporary building. It just say that limited time. So if the local authority can consider temporary permit for long term up to 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I think it is good enough for the industry. This is what the industry needs. It solves the problem and it can comply with all the requirements. So what you need to replace in the question mark is all this possibility of regulatory. Okay, proceed to the next slide. Okay, this is the next slide. I think we have to look at things in practical manners. Of course, okay, if sometimes we say that agency like to work in silo, they look at within their own authority. But I think we have to see the bigger picture, look at all the 3 different acts and different laws. So how to do this? So we need an effort for regulatory harmonization and relaxation program. Otherwise, it will kill industry. I think what Datuk Jeffrey mentioned just now. Okay, if you need 2 kilometer buffer zone, mean that you kill the industry, and then we cannot eat chicken anymore. We have to import chicken. Okay, so we have to work. The regulator have to work on how to harmonize this regulatory, because the benefit from it actually it will improve in terms of operational efficiency, faster and more consistent review approval process, so that you don't have the contradicting decision. The land office approve, local authority do not approve, and this department do not approve. So we have to coordinate so that the review process is more consistent. Then regulatory convergence. If we have 3 different or 4 different regulations regulating this, maybe we should look into how to make it convergence and reduce regulatory burden and lower regulatory and compliance cost and time. I think what Cik Zahari mentioned, the cost, the unseen cost. Actually, this is the regulatory compliance cost, which is very high, and better respond to industry practice and requirements. So before we regulate the industry, we must understand the industry. We must understand chicken. Okay, it's not like other building. Okay, so what are the challenges? So I think MPC and also the regulator should look into how to coordinate this. So the challenges that we have is unfamiliarity with the regulatory system of other regulators. Local authority, they are familiar with their own regulation, but they are not familiar with other regulation. So we need to have some maybe coordination training so that we are more familiar with the regulation. And then the legal framework, definitions and interpretation. Different people interpret regulation differently. So I think we need to, assistance from the government how to make a clearer definition and interpretation. And then non-uniformity of 3-tier regulatory governance. Of course, every state has different regulation, and then every local authority have different regulation. These are the challenges. So we need somebody to coordinate this. And then limited knowledge of technical aspect of complex requirement. I think although that the poultry farm building looks like a simple rebah ayam, but I think Dr. Yap know better the complexity of it. So we must understand that before we can regulate. Approval process involve too many agencies, divergence in decision due to separate processing approval. Sometimes the approval process was not centralized. Everybody make their own decision. So they probably look at a different angle, different perspective. So that's why we have decision which is sometimes contradicting to each other. For example, the government say we want to modernize, but due to land matter, due to many other issues, then the process cannot be done. Complexity of setting up and maintaining collaborative reviews process. This is what we are having now. Okay, it's very difficult to have a collaborative review process. So I hope that under MyMudah and also MPC, there's something that we can look, especially this can be the test case. And of course, we have many other issues other than poultry building. Then the enablers, regulatory gap analysis. So somebody need to analyze, okay, the regulatory gap. For example, just now I put a big question mark in the middle. Somebody need to analyze that gap. And we have to take the opportunity, the digitalization, secure electronic platform that we have. So all the regulators should start sharing the information between one regulator and another regulator. So we should have the centralized data. Because I think now you don't have a big issue with securities anymore, and the data sharing can be digitalized, which is very, very convenient. And other than that, common technical interpretation and definition, and we have to leverage on OAC as the coordinator. I think Cik Zahari mentioned that nobody is coordinating among the regulators. So we should leverage on OAC as a coordinator. Okay, otherwise we will have a problem, uncoordinated regulation. And then the other things that maybe we can take one or several pilot programs. So I think even looking at a bigger picture, it's not just about farmhouse, maybe other building as well. But this farmhouse can be a pilot program guided by policy and procedure to manage the pilot project, how a regulatory reform can be done to allow harmonization and relaxation in terms of regulation. So I think, Dr. Yap, I will end my explanation here. So back to you, Dr. Yap. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Azumi. That was a very, very good and very clear defining the various processes and where all the different land codes intercept and intercede each other. And I think I'm particularly I'm very thought-provoking. The big question mark of the no man's land, actually, or no legal framework land. Where are we today in that particular question mark option? And I think this is something later we'll work on probably during the forum. Some of the things that Dr. Azumi brought up, which was very interesting, I think the definition of development, it says that there should not be if there is no material change in the use of the land or the building, then it's not included in development. So actually, when you look at the poultry house, when you convert from open house to closed house, there is no in the use of the land or the building. It is still producing poultry for eggs, for that matter. Yeah. So there is no material change in that. It's not like going into a new processing factory or value added in the sense of a thing. It is just to be more efficient in meeting all the different criteria that we have in this modern world. And I think I like your very simple approach, and I also like the enablers. I think the enablers are very important, and I think that's something that perhaps MyMudah, perhaps we should look at it on the gap analysis of the various pieces of legislation governing this particular ternakan, including poultry. Now, our next speaker is panelist number 5, which is Surveyor Chong Han. Chong Han is a licensed and land surveyor and the principal of Juruko Penang. Of course, he's based in Penang. He has got a bachelor degree in survey engineering from University of New Brunswick, Canada. His areas of interest and expertise are on consultancy in land matters, strata titles, one-stop center delivery system. This is something very good. I think we will try. I'm sure he'll be able to share with us some of the experience of this one-stop center delivery system, or which we are now looking at how to make it more efficient. And currently, Surveyor Chuang is also a committee member and past chairman of the Royal Institution of Surveyor Malaysia, Northern Branch. Ministry level, he is involved in amendments of Strata Management Act, Strata Title Act. He's also in Bermuda, the focus group dealing with construction permits, and also the Special Task Force for Strata Renewal. So I think both a wealth of experience on these land matters. And with that, I'd like to hear more from Surveyor Chang Kwang Han.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yap, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. Today, I'd like to touch on the problem on land matters and approval process facing the industry, the poultry industry for that matter. So one of the first problem is land conversion approval take a long time, and also the high premium due to the change from agriculture to industry category of land use. And also, usually these lot are big lot. So what do you do with that? That's an issue there. Number 2 is the interpretation issue. As just now been explained, is closed house poultry farming under agriculture or industry category? What is the right definition? Let's look at the definition under National Land Code. Under Section 5 of the National Land Code, agriculture includes the cultivation of any crop, including trees cultivated for the purpose of their produce, market gardening, the breeding and keeping of honeybees, livestock, reptiles, and aquaculture. Now, what about the definition of industry? So, definition of industry goes back to the section 17.117.1a. There is an implied condition for industry, and this is really clearly mentioned here, that it shall be used only for industry purpose. That is to say, for the purpose of the erection or maintenance of factory, workshop, foundry, warehouse, dock, jetty, railway, and other building or installation for use in connection to one of the above. Manufacture, smelting, the production or distribution of power, the assembly, the processing, the storage, transport, distribution of goods or other commodities, such as other purpose as the state may prescribe for the purpose of this section by rule under section 14. Now, if we were to look at between these two sections, section 5 and section 717, plus other section as implied under section 115, 118, as just now explained by Dr. Izumi, which one fit in very well for our case of closed house poultry farming, or even for that matter, open house poultry farming? Should it be under agriculture or industry category? I think the idea that people have that it should be under industry category is mainly because when you look at the modern one, it looks like a factory. It's enclosed just like a factory long line. But let's not be taken by that mere outer facade. Let's look inside and see the real practical purpose as opposed to a normal factory. If you look at just now, towards the bottom, it shall be used for industrial purpose, right? And you look at it, does it jive in with this concept and the reality on the ground where you see chicken inside that enclosure, the so-called factory? It's all chicken. Then the subsequent slide, I will show to you what is it like inside. So we may take a step back and say, is it right to put it under industry? If it is not, then the obvious answer is it should still remain under agriculture, and it fit in to section 5, where it says the breeding of livestock. So there's something for food for thought, right? Rather than going into defining it as industry, because it does not fit in. Sometimes when we look at the wording, we should not be too literal interpretation, too rigid, until a plural or singular may become an issue, or the whole thing. What is the whole concept of that tree? Now in National Land Code has 3 categories of land use: agriculture, building, and industry. Among that 3, which one fit in the most appropriate, right? Let's not be taken by the mere outer shell of it. Okay, next slide, please. Now, maybe this will give you a better idea. The first picture is an open chicken farm. Nobody will deny that this is in agriculture. You see chicken, you see everything temporary. There's nobody would argue with you. Suddenly, when you go to the second picture, when you see it enclosed, right? Enclosed with it, it looks like a factory. But is it really a factory that fit in the definition of 117? On the outer, and you look at the third picture below, you see a row of what do you want to call it? Sort of a factory look alike, but is it a factory? Now look at the bottom where you see all the chicken. All you see outside this thing is just a housing, maybe aluminium, maybe plastic, and a simple roof. That's all it is. So does it fit the industry category? Something we need to relook at it, rather than be taken by the false image looking outside. Right? It's a big difference. If you look at the fourth picture where you see one of the person tendering to the chicken as opposed to a typical factory. Okay, that I think speak loud. Should it be agriculture category or industry category? If that can resolve our position, then it would assist our first proposal by Dr. Izami. It is agriculture. At least we clear that hurdle first. Right? So the proposed solution on this land matter and approval process: reduce cost, time, and procedure by simultaneous submission and processing for all land application and planning permission through OSC. Let's make this OSC and approval within 6 months work. This OSC has been on for many years since I started opening my own business. In 2007, the issue of this approval process has been identified, and at last, the KPKT Ministry is bold enough to take a very drastic change and introduce OSC, streamline everything, including the land matter. Now, under this OSC, we can submit our land application simultaneously with planning permission. Since 2007, this has been approved by the Cabinet. But until today, sad to say, on the ground, it is not happening. It is not happening. It's been 13 years past. We have many roadmaps, yet it is not happening. Why is that? Maybe we need to relook at it. So to say it is not possible, I would say it is possible. Interministry has worked out on it. We have come up with a flow chart on how to reduce it. And it can be done. It's only a question of on the ground implementation issue. We don't need any more roadmaps. We already have OSC flowchart, then we got online OSC, then 2015 we come up with OSC 3.0, 2020 we come up with OS 3.0 plus. It's all shown there that you can submit simultaneously, yet on the ground it is not happening. Right? That is one. So that can reduce the time significantly from a typical 1 year to 2 years, now down to 6 months, because that is the objective of the flowchart, of the OSC concept, by doing simultaneous submission. And it's workable, right? That when we submit our land matter, that means in this case, the conversion, we can submit simultaneously with planning permission. And while the planning permission is being processed and approved, land office can do their own application, start the process, charting, go to site report, give recommendation to PDG. At the same time, now PDG can also start at the same time. Does it fulfill the condition for approval under surrender and re or conversion or subdivision, right? Section 124A. They can look at it subject to the final layout. But why do they need to wait until the planning is approved, until layout is endorsed by the pre-com plan, the pre-com plan is endorsed by the OSC? Why do you need to wait there? Why do you need it? Can it be done at the same time? It is workable, right? It is workable. Then in this case, we have typically we have to submit our conversion process before planning permission. Then it will take you at least 1 year to clear that, or minimum 6 months to clear that, pay our premium. Then only we can submit our planning permission. Then when the planning permission, you take another 3 months to 6 months, right? Then you get your planning permission. All in, you will take 2 years or 3 years, as Dr. Jeffrey and the industry player are complaining. It takes a long time because we are doing it sequentially. Whereas you can do it simultaneously, yet it is happening on the ground. Something we need to relook at it. So in this case, quite often, item number 2, proposed solution. I've been in this issue for many years, right? And it's not working. Somehow or other, I don't quite understand, right? That is my first-hand experience. How to make simultaneous submission, land and planning, and then planning permission to be approved conditionally, subject to the state approval on all land matter later. That also I'm facing problem on the ground, right? We're saying that, why can't you approve planning permission? Planning must come first, then followed by land matter, not the other way around. Land matter, conversion must come first, then only the planning. What happens if the conversion is approved, you pay premium, then your planning permission rejected? Or they impose a condition that the industry player, the owner say, I cannot fulfill. Say for instance, 1 kilometer buffer zone. They are dead. What happened to the premium paid? And the syarat nyata that has already been changed, endorsed on the title. Can you go back? What if you change it to industry? Now the planning permission is rejected. What happened to your whole land? You cannot continue what you are doing because you already changed to industry, but which you are not going to do it. You only interested to solve this poultry farm issue. Yet you already changed your title and premium already paid. How do you reverse back? And sad to say, you cannot go back. What is paid, it doesn't come out from the government coffer. It goes in one way, it doesn't come out. So your title, you want to change, can. You put another application. So there's something that we need to think. But this is issue on the ground. This is the purpose of this webinar, to identify issue faced by the industry player on the ground. Third thing, land conversion to agriculture, not to industry, with express condition for chicken farm, so long as there is breeding of livestock. And it fit in according to section 5, where it says definition of agriculture include breeding of livestock. Here we have live chicken there, kicking around, right? Should not that be clear enough that it should be more appropriate to be as agriculture category rather than change it to category just because of the housing, the aluminum enclosure there, that make it become an industry. I think we should look at the content of it rather than the external facade. So this, another part of that on conversion, one is the category, right? Agriculture to industry or agriculture to still agriculture. The other second part is the express condition, or in Malay we call it syarat nyata. Quite often you have an agriculture land, tanah ini hanya untuk kelapa sawit. So now you have one element. Part of the land is being leased out to the chicken farmer to do chicken farming. Do you need to convert the whole land? And what is the premium going to be affected? It's very high cost if you convert a big land. Just like a typical case, you have a oil palm. Now, in one corner of it, you have a chicken farm. So if you want to convert, can you convert just one small portion, 1/10 of it, leaving the other? You have a problem there. That need to be resolved. So typically the land office will say, okay, you convert the whole thing. And to the owner, you say, I don't want that, I just want that small portion. Right? Not the whole land. How do we deal with that kind of scenario? Big lot with a small portion of it, say 10% only for chicken farming, like a oil palm, large oil palm, or the whole land that is only for chicken farming, clear cut. How do we handle that scenario? And the premium. So if we can do it simultaneously, then this case would solve the problem of planning come first, we know it can be done, then we follow up with the land matter. Rather than you settle your premium conversion, then you come to the planning. So in this, I would say that it really requires up to the ministry level, the respective ministry. One is Land and Natural Resources, the Jabatan Ketua Pengarah, to study on how to facilitate this all over the country, because every land office have different interpretation. So I feel like there is a need for the ministry level to intervene so that it can synchronize throughout the whole country, just like National Land Code objective is to synchronize and provide uniformity for the whole country in land matters. In this case, JKPDJ can come out to facilitate and issue new KPDG circular to resolve this land matter, not submitting simultaneously. Then this OSC approval process whereby the land office can give comment during the planning permission, say tidak sokong kerana terpaksa perlu membuat ubah syarat terlebih dahulu. So your whole KM is thrown out, and they ask you, you go and settle your land conversion first, pay the premium, then only you come back to us. Yeah, there are two levels you can say. One is at the land office comment level during planning permission, where get kicked out because of that. I've experienced that many times. Then third thing, on the closed house poultry farm issue. If you look at the National Land Code as highlighted by Dr. Izumi, there is a problem. And we look at that, has we really amended the National Land Code to keep up with the current development? In my opinion, it has not. As you can obviously see, you all stress the point, agriculture is temporary. But if you put a aluminium housing on it, does it make it totally revamp it when the inside is still a chicken breeding of livestock? What are we focusing on? Maybe in 1965, that description worked fine. But now in 2020, right, 35 years later, is it still relevant? Is it time to reconsider those definitions? When it was first drafted, what was the spirit then? And imagine in the drafting of the act, which I involved some of the act. Sometimes when we are the drafting committee, we start looking at the scenario and say, how do we overcome it by amending certain provision. And we only are limited by our experience, what we see at this current moment, or what has been happening. It's not forcing ahead, quite often the case. So is it timely that National Land Code to be reviewed on this part, this provision that involve poultry farming, and even for that OSC matter that involve for housing and all those that require that go through OSC? Because this is the part that we need expedite matter. Land is a state matter, right? So number 5, just now I mentioned, sad to say, this OSC has been on for long years, many times, 13 years ago, and it got so many approval up to the highest cabinet, ministry level, yet when it filtered down to the ground, somehow or other, it is still not working 100%. So I propose that the solution that MyMudah at the state level be established, chaired by the state SUK, in collaboration with the NGOs to facilitate resolving land matters, OSC approval process, and closed house farming issue. Because at every state, there are different enactment. Land is a state matter, and you got different scenario involving which state level is best to handle it. At the MyMudah HQ and at the ministry level, they handle for the whole country as a general framework for all the respective states to work on, right? Because sometimes on the ground, they say, who am I to interpret it when the national code says so? So that you still need a federal level. Then MyMudah HQ and the relevant ministry can work on that to update with the current issue, current development, 2020, not 1965 anymore. It's a way long overdue. Number 6, state authority to consider allow special low conversion premium since chicken and egg are under government control price ceiling. The industry player cannot raise up the price. It is an important national food, right? It's an important issue. It's not something that you don't build, you don't comply, you leave it off. But what happened, as the Dato' Jerry Tan say, there are so many farms that is already in production. That's why our price of chicken and egg are still affordable. Then what happened if, because of this environmental aspect, the order and the flies and the political situation, making all of them eventually die off? Because authority are saying, I'm not renewing a license. So eventually it lead off to a situation whereby they are not carrying on by the next generation, by the next person. What happened? So something that we need to look at it in a broader context, not just on a very narrow, right? It affects every one of us. So I think with that, we should think on a broader perspective, not just on a very narrow, just like Section 5, Section 118, Section 115, right? So we should look in a broader picture. Okay, next. Okay, all right. With that, I think if there's no more slide, I end my presentation. Back to you, Dr. Yap.
Thank you very much, Sabiat Chuang. I think there was a very good suggestions that you have brought out, and also identified some of the problems. And I think we will certainly take this up again and open for cross discussion during the planning process. I think because I can see that time is moving on. I'm going to now pass this back to our Cik Nurul on the MCs for the day. And I believe that we have a polling section to conduct. Cik Nurul, over back to you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Yap. Thank you to all the panelists also for the very insightful presentation. So now we're going to have a simple poll. So attendees, I'll be launch the poll, then the attendees can answer the poll and the result will be auto-generated after I ended the poll session. All right, so everyone ready? So we're going to have like 3 minutes of time for the attendees to answer the poll. Everyone can see the poll in your screen?
Ms. Nurul, the host
Yes?
and panelists cannot vote
Yeah,
for the poll. It's only for the participants.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we have already received 15 response from the attendees. One minute and 30 seconds before the poll ends.
There's few more questions on the poll question.
Yep. There are 5 questions in the poll. So now we have 42 attendees who have answered the poll. To all attendees, if you have any inquiries or question, you may post your question in the question and a box down below. So maybe panelists can read out your question, or they can answer you directly from the box down there. All right, 3 minutes done. So I may end the poll now, and the result of the poll will be appear in your screen. Everyone can see the result? For first question, 70% of the attendees agree and 24% of the attendees does not agree. For the second question, we have 69 attendees agree and 31% does not agree. For the third question, we have 94 attendees that agrees and 6% does not agree. Fourth question, 80% agree and 20% does not agree. And the last question, 94% agree and only 8% does not agree. So this is the result of the poll, and maybe
Puan Nurul, I think it's very
yes,
interesting result. Looking at the number 5,
yeah,
94%. I think 94% believe that kebenaran merancang is the biggest problem.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think it's something that I think we should look into it. If 94% of the participants say that there is the problem, then I think
yes,
something that government and regulator has to seriously
yes,
look
take
into.
into account.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now maybe we can, the panelists can continue to discuss on this matter during the panelist discussion. Okay, now maybe I can pass back to Dr. Yap to continue with the next session, which is forum discussion. Dr. Yap, are you ready?
Yes, Puan Nurul.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I think the poll was very interesting and a very short time. We had some recognition that there are regulatory burdens impeding the progression of the poultry industry, especially to modern farming. And closed house is one of the steps towards modern farming, modern poultry farming. And I think we should take cognizance of what people are saying. Now, and especially what Dr. Azumi said, more than 90% feel that the KM is a big stumbling block. Now, I'm going to now go back into the panel now. We are going to the next part of the last part of our program, the panel discussion. And again, I'm going to give 10 minutes to each panelist. We got 60 minutes to go for this panel discussion. And you got 5 panelists here. So I'm going to take maybe 10 minutes to sum up at the end. But so I'm going to give 10 minutes each to each panelist to say something, especially maybe after looking at what everybody has said and also looking at what the poll has come up with. Now, I'd like to invite, first of all, panelist number 1, Mr. Terry Tan. Now, we'll give you another 10 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Yap. After listening to all the panelists presented the points of a closed house system and the barriers of moving towards the KM, I quite agree with Dr. Azumi that the temporary housing will be more appropriate for the farming. It will be the very straightforward and less cost method to get our farming done in a short time of period instead of waiting for KM yearly, maybe I would say 6 months, 1 year. And my experience of getting a KM will be more than 2 years, basically that, and it's just started to build first piling. So it means that it's very painful way of doing so. And I hope that what is being suggested by Dato' Azumi can be considered by the government to expedite the building of a new farming, and we can move towards to enhance and to increase our productions in our poultry to achieve SSL, and in the future we are looking at a 200 SSL, and of course this has to be encouraged by the government. Without the encouragement, we are very difficult to move forward. And thank you very much. Those are my comment for this webinar. And I feel sorry to hear the Dr. Jeffrey having a 2-kilometer buffer zone. And it's too much. 2 kilometers that we need to buy 100 hectares, or maybe we need to move to the jungle. And how about the closed house system? We need electricity, TMB. How far we can pull the cable? how much it would cost. Between 1 kilometer will easily to cost us $1 million for TMB set up for a substation. And definitely we need a substation because we are in a closed house system. We need very high voltage to run this closed house system. And beside that, we hope that the TMB will consider that to facilitate and to give us our access to TMB, at least the putting up the substation close to our farm or to any area dedicated. There is a farming by the government saying that this Mukim, what is a farming, then the TMB will facilitate that to pull the cable close to our farm, that which a substation. So it means that at least that we don't spend too much money on the pulling the cable and setting up the substation. And this is part of the, because the cost of moving to the modern farming. And by the way, 2 kilometers definitely is not feasible at all, or else go for the solar energy.
I agree with Mr. Terry. Sometimes the regulator also impose unnecessary regulation.
Yeah. Also, we hope that we have a standardized. So what I mean, we definitely need our government to come up with a standardized, simplified SOP for every farmer in Malaysia. At least that there is a guideline, and whoever want to build a new farm, they just follow the SOP. With the SOP, the government departments will get the approval easily. They give a guideline, they will follow it, and there's no argument. All right, and land title and those zoning especially, that's also very difficult for the existing farm in Malaysia, because a lot of our existing farm currently is operating just beside the housing area. 20, 30 years ago, we are running farm in an estate, but because of development is getting go to the outside the town, outside the main city. So currently we are facing the issue of development just beside us, and very close to that, it could be less than a meter, maybe less than 100 meters. So this is also the concern of our existing farms in Malaysia. If you want to fulfill all the KM being designed by the government, I guess more than 50% of our Malaysian farm will be closed down. I don't think that we can fulfill that, but hope that the Pemote Han in Penang, regardless any buffer zone, zoning especially, the first state that of applying the KM, there's zoning, so it can be exempted. Then we can continue to run our farm, to continue to produce a chicken and eggs with a competitive price, reasonable price to the Malaysian, and we will move towards the next level, to the international level, for the exportation. If we have what I mean, those government supports that we can do a investment for the poultry and increase the productions and reducing the cost. Once we go to economy of scales, definitely the cost of the production will be reduced. Then we can compete to the other country, like just now somebody bring our issue, Thailand. We can compete with that. There's not the issue at all. Basically, that we are not behind the Thailand. We are actually good enough in the poultry in the world. Our technology being used for the poultry is I can see that it's top 3 or top 5. It's very effective. All the setup, all the things that we implemented in the current closed house system in the modern farming, they are good. So I thank you very much, and I will pass it to the next panelist to give a comment after this webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Terry Tan. Certainly, a couple of points that are really worthwhile taking note. What was once a remote area for the poultry farm, with urbanization, now you're coming very close to a housing estate. And I think this is where I think what was once said about the planning, the master plan for a state, that and when you have a KM, you actually must take cognizance that there are poultry farms there. So whether that piece of land next to the farm should be approved for housing or not. Or if you do, then I think you have to compensate the farm. I think these are some of the issues that have been faced by the poultry industry. We must make provisions in every state for poultry production. Otherwise, why call it a food security issue? Now, I think the other thing, I think it's interesting that Mr. Terry Tan spoke about our industry, poultry industry, being very competitive. In fact, for information of all participants, Malaysia has got some very good competitive advantages for expanding the industry into a market and into export industry, because we have a cheaper source of corn and soybean meal being the two most important ingredients for the feed of the chicken, compared to other ASEAN countries, whether Thailand or Indonesia. We are probably 9 to 10% cheaper than Thailand for our feed costs for that, in that sense. So I think, and then we have JAKIM, which is also a renowned halal accreditation agency, recognized globally. And I think we are not taking advantage of all these things to further modernize our poultry industry, further expand it so that we get economy of scale, better productivity, better product quality, so that we can earn some money and reduce the differences in the import, food import bill. I think this is something that when you go into regulatory reform, there are many advantages, such as for taking on an export market. But okay, we are going coming back to this. I thought I should mention this because nobody has mentioned other than Mr. Terry Tan. Now I'd like to invite the next speaker, next panelist, to share his view. 10 minutes. Dr. Jeffrey.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Now, a lot of things that you're already talking about. It's tough for me to say something. But anyway, I think you know, the industry is actually at the tipping point now. We were used to produce self-sufficient level of more than 120%. But that self-sufficient level have dropped to close to 100% now because of all these regulatory changes or all these authority changes happening in Malaysia. You know, as a food security concern, you know, I think that on the national level, we need to decide where are we going to go ahead or where are we heading. You know, how can we assure all the farm can be sustainable? Otherwise, you know, we're going to lose this industry and we're going to lose it forever, because to build such an industry is tough. It's not easy. Look at this industry for the past 20, 30 years or 40 years, you know, it was evolving by itself, you know, have less support by the governments, less subsidies and whatnot. But the industry have changed and evolved over the time. And we're still evolving. The whole issue is the whole roadblock that we are facing now is basically the KM, the building plan and whatnot. If we cannot quickly resolve this issue, you know, this problem could be a stepping stone for everything to move forwards. And also because I think if we were to look at food security, wise, you know, you're looking at the affordabilities. So as Dr. Yap said, you know, I think in 2015 or 2016, we did a paper with USDA, US Agriculture's departments, and also US Grain Council, calculating the cost of growing chicken or live chicken within the region, Malaysia, Thai, Malaysia, Thai, Indonesia, Philippines, and also India. It was surprised that Malaysia come up to be the lowest, even compared to Thailand on live bird basis. The reason why Thai corn, even though they plant corn, in Indonesia they plant corn, in Philippines plant corn, they actually doesn't allow importation. So if you were to import corn from overseas, you have to pay levy. Whereas Malaysia, where we encourage zero levy. That's why our cost of corn and soybean meal are cheaper than the rest of the region of country. I also share with some people. I said, well, people keep on asking us, why are you hiring all foreign labor? But if you were to look at Thailand, even Thailand are 100% foreign labor for their farming. So they are the 4th or 5th largest exporter in the world. Their SSL is 200%. But we are cheaper than them, and we can't move anywhere at all. So if we can settle the issue. The other issue that we need to highlight in this forum is, the misperception of the people against chicken farming. They always believe that the chicken farming was old, was like what we showed just now, wooden structures, smelly, attracting a lot of fly. But you look at the farm that I have now, it is 100% enclosed, steel structures, like Dato Azumi said, it's actually a modular type of things where we can put it up very quick and we can dismantle it very quick. So that is the technology that we are using now. It's not no longer what we say, because even wooden structures, after you build it, I don't think you can reuse that wooden structures, because you have newed it, you have cut it to pieces, so you can't. But with the latest modern technology that we are able to use, fly and OD issue have been minimized. But the whole issue is we as a farmer have not basically talked about it much, because we are worried about our biosecurity. By inviting public to go to our farm, it's actually endangers our investment. They may bring disease into the farm, or they could bring disease out from the farm, vice versa. So, we have been quietly, changing a lot of things and improving a lot of things. But then, the misconception of people or the public is difficult to change. So, we somehow or another we have to find another level to talk about, what is the new farming now? What have we changed? What have we done to the chicken that we serve on the table, which is, I think, 10 times better than whatever mentality that they have. A lot of people were talking about free range, but is it free range the best way? Because free range, then you're talking open house. So, the government need to assure what direction are they heading to. So with that, I leave it to the floor, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jeffrey. I think here we are, again, reinforce the point that our SSL, that our self-sufficient level has dropped from, it used to be about 107%, now it's dropped to 103%. One estimate by University Pertanian Malaysia, they say we are about 90% only, if you take into all the account, import, export. And I think it may drop further if we are faced with all this dilemma here today. And I think the other thing that also was brought about just now, Mr. Terry also said that, well, you have a closed house, you move to a closed house, but then you still need buffer zone of 2 kilometers. I mean, what's the point of going into a closed house? So I think this is something that the authorities maybe should look at, whether closed house should still have the same kind of buffer zone as a open house. I brought this up because Dr. Jeffrey just said that the closed house, you require, you have very little fly and odor problem. Now with that, I'd like to move on to the third panelist, which is our Inche Azari, and let him share his views after.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Yap. I think we all share some common views, I think, across the board. I'd like to touch on what I call are the soft issues. But prior to that, I just want to also highlight that Malaysia imports something about 70 billion ringgit worth of food a year. We are a net food importer at this point in time. And the poultry industry itself, I think, produces about RM 10 billion ringgit a year within the agro-food sector. So the poultry industry is a very, very important industry within the agro-food sector, which itself is about 9% of GDP. Again, like I said, I'll just focus on the soft issues. There seems to be what I call a silo mentality here. Silo mentality, which means each local authority says, "I do my part," right? I'm not bothered about the rest, And then there is no desire to link the problem to other authorities. As I said, the silo mentality, which is prevalent in many industries. So, and the government local authority notwithstanding. So we have to look at the entire poultry supply chain link as well, within the local authority. So, like I said, let's try to remove this silo mentality, because actually Malaysia's public and private sector are intertwined. Yeah, what we want, just imagine, right? You have a computer, you have a laptop, right? But the laptop gives you problems. It's supposed to make your job better, but it gives you problems. So again, what we want is a government authority which is what I call user-friendly. I think that's, for me, that has to be where I think the local authority, at state level, at local level, statutory bodies, they have to be user-friendly. And I think the goal should be moving towards trying to be as user-friendly as possible. Yeah, and of course there are gaps. Yeah, there are mismatched expectations. So the thing is, let's all sit down and see how we can close those gaps. And let's match the expectations. Let's try to get on the same page so that we have a desired end product. Right? We want a desired end product that the government wants, and so does the private sector, which is in this case the poultry industry. Right? There are a lot of benefits by this. Of course, you have, on the macro level, you have GDP growth, you have increased employment, increased incomes, and not to mention the fact that there's also increased income for the government. The government collects taxes from land, from building, all these things. So the government could actually benefit from it as well, by having a user-friendly bureaucracy. And well, the thing is, you also ask the question, well, how do you start? The start is maybe perhaps the mindset to have the will to change. That's what we want. There must be someone who says that, let's change this, right? That will must be there. It's no point having the skill if you don't have the will. If you go to a government authority office, you see the nice flow charts, you see the organization structure. Fantastic. And it's probably on paper, that's how it should be. But the thing is, how does that flow chart work within itself? How does the organization chart, you see this nice pyramid, but how does that pyramid work within itself? This is the thing. This is what's not on the organization chart. This is what's not on the flow chart. What you see is nice flow chart diagram, but it doesn't show how that flow works. And again, like I said, it goes back to being how user-friendly is the methodology. And again, on a big picture, all this affects Malaysia's competitiveness. Right? As I mentioned earlier, a bureaucracy can actually help to promote economic activity, or it can hamper it if it is not done well. As I said, what we want is an effective bureaucracy that facilitates all the the submissions, the planning approval, so that there is a win-win for everyone. So, as I said, these are, to me, the key soft issues that we have to look at. we have all the rules and regulations as Dato' Azumi correctly pointed out, and you also correctly pointed out some of the shortcomings and some of the misconceptions of all those rules, and because again, we have to think in a way that how can we make it better, how can we make it right, and how can we expedite things. I mean, again, this is what the bureaucracy is for. It is to expedite things, and I'm sure everybody wants, as I said, a win-win situation. So I think we have to start to seriously look at this, because if we don't, we will lose our competitiveness. This is one of the things that you can talk about, giving all sorts of economics and tax incentives for everybody to come in. I mean, tax holiday, pioneer status. But all of that is only as good as the government bureaucracy. I mean, I remember when we first started, I think the multimedia super corridor. The idea was the right way to have the one multimedia super corridor. It will first a body that work, which is MCMC, which will facilitate everything. And I suppose in this industry, we may need something like a poultry industry equivalent of an MCMC that may start to do all these changes that we are talking about, and that which is the industry is actually screaming out for. But as I said, we want the government to be on the same page as us. We want them to be on our side. We want them to be our backer. And I think the only way we can do that is we sit down together, we list out all our issues, all our problems, and have this willingness to solve it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Azhari, for some good thoughts. I think user-friendly, or we say business-friendly. I think right now, with all the things that we have heard, everybody, including what the attendees in the poll section has said, we are not business-friendly. So if our government is not, if our country here, we are not business-friendly, I think the industry will really deteriorate. And I think we'll lose our, not only lose our competitive edge, as what Dr. Jeffrey said, we might even lose the industry and start importing. I think this is a very dangerous alarm bells that I think we should take cognizance of. And I think, let me now quickly invite my next panelist, Dr. Azumi, for you to say a few more words.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yap. I think what Mr. Azhari mentioned just now, I think it's very relevant. So these are the bureaucracy that we are facing, not just in this poultry industry, but in many other industry as well. So recently, even we discussed at higher level, so there are investors who like to invest, and some of them, they are existing investor in this country. They want to expand. They want to build a 1.8 billion facility in one of the states. But due to bureaucracy, getting the approval for the new factory, then they decided maybe I should pull out and set up the factory in Vietnam. This is not something that we want. While we are working very hard through MyMudah, MyTrade, MITI to bring investor in, we have KL Invest, Langwat Invest. But if we do not look into the actual issues on the ground, the actual problem on the ground, all the red tapes that hindering investor to come in, even the local investor now, the local investor want to set up the factory in Malaysia, having problem now, they have to move out from the country. Our own Malaysia company now setting up the factory overseas in Vietnam, Indonesia, in China. So why is that happening to us? So I think some people, maybe the regulator side, they look at things differently. Of course, we have to regulate things to ensure the safety and health of the public. But at the same time, we have to strike a balance, okay, between not all the industry or investment is going to be harmful to the safety and health. It's just that we need to understand the industry better. Sometimes regulations are created without clear picture or clear understanding of the industry, of the businesses. That's the That's why we're having all this problem. And every time we have problem, we start to introduce new regulation. And every time we have issues, another regulation. So at the end, too many regulation, and the industry just cannot comply with it. I show you example just now. This industry cannot comply with all the 3 regulation. So this is where actually the role of regulator has to change. It's not the regulator or the PBT. It should not be the parties hindering investment or development, but it should be the party to facilitate and to guide investment and development. It's not just in building development, but also in agriculture industry as well. So I would like to also highlight that under the pandemic, under the COVID-19 pandemic situation, at the beginning when we imposed the MCO, Movement Control Order, on 18th of March. So people start to, it somehow trigger some panic button. So people start to worry about food security, whether are we going to get the supply or not. There was no bread, no food at that time. And then the government say that nobody can go out, okay, only men can go and buy food. But after that, there's some relaxation to the restriction. Okay, a few weeks later, the government start to say that okay, those who delivering food, like Food Panda or Grab Food, they're allowed to deliver food. And then after that, there's more relaxation, and there's some restaurants start to be allowed to open. And then people at the beginning, you just take away, you cannot eat at the restaurant, but today you can eat at the restaurant. So this is how a regulation structure is supposed to be. Okay, we have to understand the situation, and then the regulation should be facilitating the business, not restricting. If we follow the MCO, the earlier implementation of MCO, the restaurants, they cannot open today. Everybody have to sit at home, and I'm sure the whole economic structure already collapsed by now. So similarly with the poultry industry, if the regulation was implemented or introduced in 1965, 1976, it's time now to review and to facilitate the growth of the industry. And everybody knows that how important food security to any nation. So I think we should look seriously, not just to this industry and any other industry as well. So I think that's all my view at the moment. Dr. Yap, back to you, Dr. Yap. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Azumi, for your views. And now I'd like to invite Surveyor Chang Kwang Ming.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yap. There are a couple of points that I'd like to say here. One is I concur with Encik Azhari. Yeah, Encik Azhari.
Yes.
The idea of needing to what I call improve the approval process, right? And the government is doing that in the right direction, as seen from the introduction of OSC since 2007, right? 2007, you come up with roadmap, but somehow along the line, the implementation works in certain way, but it's not achieved its ultimate objective, which is approval, or the approval process within 6 months for normal project and 3 months for those with a high impact. If we can really go back and see how to make it work, that original objective, I think it will solve a lot of issue, both in many sectors. One is a poultry farming, so you won't have the issue about long period for conversion, right? And so is our housing industry. Also many industry are affected in this OSC. So interesting to think, way back in 2012, there was an article by an investor, and he voiced out his frustration that he would also consider, he was limiting on this OSC, the whole process, not able to achieve it. That as an investor, as a Malaysian, he would recommend that his company, which is a multi-regional, to invest outside Malaysia because it takes so long to get it approved, as opposed to a neighboring country. Thailand take it 9 months from beginning until your piling, commencement of work, as explained by Encik Hazari. There's a need to really look at this aspect. The approval process is taking too long, right? It's scaring investor. Even now, after 8 years, I'm hearing the same thing, which I saw it in the newspaper, red tape in 2012. Now it's still alarming again, right? I think that's where we need to relook at it. I totally agree. Number two, the other part is concerning the Kemenang Merancang. I remember way back in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, JPBD, Jabatan Perancang Bandar dan Desa under KPKT, during the special task force under KPKT, how to improve OSC. The JPBD has came out with exemption for planning permission. They got a list of it, but somehow or other, that never get filtered down to the ground. I can see at the ministry level, task force discussion, decision, deliberation, then come to the implementation level at the respective DOC officers are not aware, they are not implementing it. There's a gap from highest level down to the implementers at the ground level, right? So if they can extend, JPPD have give a list, I think 4 or 5 things that as planning permission can be exempted. Maybe in this area, they should consider whether it can be exempted, something to look into that. But I do know for sure that they do give exemption to planning permission. Not everything needs planning permission. So if that is a step towards what Dr. Izumi is saying, exemption from planning permission and land conversion, we stick it to only agriculture category. I think we resolve that too big hurdle, right? The third thing is that steel structure enclosure considered a permanent structure? As Dato' Defri just said, it's a modular, you can put it up, you can take it out as fast. So if we were to take that 3 element in a proper perspective, maybe we can relook that we may not need a planning permission. If you can spell out what are the conditions to fulfill, right? SOP, a new SOP to fulfill. That is probably JBPD, JKT at KPKT level to take it up. Then at the ground level, through PEMUDA state level, to help to facilitate how to achieve the result, right? Rather than HQ, and then come to the ground, it doesn't work. Some or other, who coordinate it? Nobody coordinate it. So with that, I think it's timely to relook again at the OSC and how to achieve that 6 month and the 3 month. And to me, I feel like the roadmap is there. Now it's question implementation on the ground. With that, I hand over back to Dr. Yap.
Thank you, Mr. Chong. Thank you very much. I think that concludes all the 5 panelists' views. I think we have brought out some very key issues here. One which I think there's a lot of gap analysis here to be done, and I want also a myth that are in the country, that the poultry farm is a factory, and therefore it has to be on industrial basis, or industrial convert from agriculture to industrial land. Whereas we are very clear actually that a modern poultry farm, even on a closed house basis, it is still a farm. It's still a farm. It's still an agriculture activity. And I think that this myth somehow has not been properly, it's a misunderstanding maybe by some of the authorities. I think this is something to be, that we have to correct, I think. And I think also we need to perhaps even look at whether we need to review the National Land Code so that the Agricultural Land Code allow the definition of a temporary or permanent building, whether a temporary building is one that is, what is the definition of temporary building? Can a poultry farm be be allowed to operate for 15 years for that example, so that it's still classified as a temporary building. And I think that would give them the investors confidence to go into the industry. Otherwise, if it's on a year-to-year basis, I think very difficult. And I think that also applies to the lesser nonggas, whether we could extend the lesser nonggas to 5 years. And I think our panelist, Mr. Chong, Surveyor Chong, has also mentioned that we really need to go back to the OSC and really make that more efficient, so that we come back to shortening some of these processes to 6 months rather than 2 years. But that also, it means that whether or not we need to apply for KM, if we go by what Dr. Azumi is saying, then probably we don't even need KM. We just exist in the agriculture basis. Can I move this? So I think this is something that we need to. I lost visual. We need to look at this thing, and that from this particular webinar, I think we have some of these very urgent issues to look at before our investors start to move to other countries. And I think that's the last thing that we want to see happening, because then we'll lose our very, very important industry, which is serving the needs of the country as far as supplying staple meat, a very important provision in our national food security. And I think we need to look at some of the areas. I won't try to repeat everything that has been said, but these are some of the very important issues: the cost of processing, cost of application, the duration of application, the conversions of the tukar syarat, the usage of the land, and then that one under the National Land Code. There is something that the Department of Veterinary Services, talking to Dr. Hisham Faiz the other day, and he said that he has actually, the DVS has actually already made a proposal on SOP, which will only involve 3 agencies: the DVS, DOE, and DID. And this could then shorten the whole process of trying to apply for the land usage, so that it is not so 2 years for conversion of the tukar syarat, or even building a poultry house. So I think perhaps something like that, but it's not been applicable to all the states. I think 3 states are studying it. Those are the states in the south, and I think certainly the SOP that the Department of Veterinary Services has formulated, I think worth to take into consideration. And I think with that, I'd like to hand back to our MC, Cik Nurul.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Yap and all the panelists. Okay, now we have come to the end of today's session. On behalf of the organizer, I would like to express our greatest appreciation to Yang Berbahagia, Datuk Dr. IR Andy Siao, Co-Chair Pemuda, for his welcoming remarks earlier today. To all the panelists, thank you for a very insightful sharing and information. And to all the attendees, thank you for your time and participation. The organizer would like to encourage the participant to visit our Unified Public Consultation portal, where you can leave your regulatory concern or comments or opinion in the MyMudah consultation, public consultation. So the consultation will be closed by Friday, 20 August 2020. The link of the link to the public consultation is is as stated in the screen, where you can search for the consultation at upc.mpc.gov.my. For those participants who have not yet registered as a UPC user, you can do so, and then you can view the complete or the full consultation document in the MyMudah consultation. So now we also prepare a simple feedback form, whereby the attendees can send the can scan the QR code here, the feedback form, and you can submit the your feedback so that we can improve our session for future betterment. All right. Now we can end our session, and thank you for the participation, and I'll see you guys in the next session. Thank you to all the panelists. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay productive, everyone. Assalamualaikum and bye-bye.